Welcome back to Dilk. So in this video we are going to cover the first chapter of 10th CBSE chemistry in few minutes. Okay, we will just cover all the topics within few minutes and you will be able to understand it very easily, clearly and nicely. So let's get started. So we have learned different terms, right? Combination, decomposition, displacement, displacement, a lot of terms. So we can just summarize all these points here that we have discussed in detail in the last video where we discussed all the topic less than 1 hour. So if you guys did watch those videos, just go and watch and you will get the complete concept, everything from that chapter. Then come back here, it will give you the best result. Okay, so the chapter is chemical reactions and equations. Okay, this is our chapter name. What are there in this chapter? There are totally 5 important chemical reactions: combination reaction, decomposition reaction, displacement reaction, double displacement reaction and redox reaction. Redox reaction is oxidation plus reduction, that is commonly known as redox reaction. So these are the 5 important reactions in this chapter. Now we can go through these topics. Combination reaction. What is combination reactions? 2 or more reactants combines to form a single product. For example, calcium oxide plus H2O combines to form calcium hydroxide. This is a combination reaction. And decomposition reaction. Decomposition reaction is just opposite to combination reaction. So in combination reactions, there 2 or more reactants combine to form product. But in decomposition reaction, one reactant decomposes to form 2 or more products. So the important term is single reactant is converted into 2 or more products. And here for this reaction, decomposition reaction, it always needs some energy to break this bond. So based on the energy used, we can have different types of decomposition reactions: thermal decomposition, photolytic decomposition, electrolytic decomposition. So if it is using the thermal energy, heat energy, then it is thermal decomposition. If it is using sunlight, then it is known as photolytic decomposition reaction. If it is using electric current, then it is known as electrolytic decomposition reaction. And for example, generally we can say decomposition reaction, CaCO3 is converted into CaO and carbon dioxide. This is an example for decomposition reaction. Now displacement reaction. Here more reactive metal is displacing the less reactive one from its solution state. For example, iron plus copper sulfate gives FeSO4 plus copper. So here Fe is the more reactive than copper. So Fe can replace copper in the copper sulfate solution and release the copper and forms FeSO4. So we have discussed these topics also. One important point that we have to notice is reactivity series. So in the reactivity series, the metals with the high reactivity will replace the metals with low reactivity. The metals in the left side will displace the metals in the right side. Okay, then double displacement reaction. In double displacement reaction, ion exchange is happening. So the reactants are exchanging their ions to each other and often they produce a precipitate which is insoluble in solvent. For example, Na2SO4 plus BaCl2 gives BaSO4 plus 2NaCl. Here Na2SO4 and BaCl2, they are exchanging their ions each other and produce NaCl and BaSO4. Here BaSO4 is the precipitate. The precipitate is indicated using this downward arrow. Now the next reaction, redox reaction, which is combination of oxidation and reduction, means that redox reaction is a chemical reaction in which oxidation and reduction happens together. What is oxidation? Oxidation is either gain of oxygen or loss of hydrogen. For example, in 2Cu plus O2, copper is adding oxygen to that. So you can compare the reactant and product. In reactant there is no oxygen atom with the copper, but in product there is oxygen atom with the copper. That means oxygen is added to copper. So there is a oxidation reaction. But in this reaction, reduction reaction, what is reduction? Loss of O2 or gain of H2. Means that for example, copper oxide plus H2 gives copper plus H2O. Here we are adding hydrogen and or we can say removal of oxygen, CuO to Cu. This conversion, here there was oxygen with copper but it loses that oxygen and form copper. So that is reduction reaction. And in a reaction, oxidation and reduction both happens together, that is redox reaction. Now exothermic and endothermic. What is exothermic? Heat released. If in a reaction, during the reaction, heat is released, then that reaction is exothermic reaction. For example, in this reaction CH4 plus 2O2, CO2 plus 2H2O, during this reaction heat is released, so that reaction is exothermic. Then endothermic reaction. Endothermic means heat absorbed. If during a reaction, if it is absorbing heat, then that reaction is known as endothermic reaction. For example, doing calcium carbonate conversion to calcium oxide and CO2 carbon dioxide. This is a decomposition reaction that we have learned in this decomposition part. During this reaction, heat is released. So this reaction is known as endothermic reaction. If heat is released, then the reaction is known as endothermic reaction. Then the last two terms, corrosion and rancidity. What is corrosion? Corrosion is slow oxidation of metals by environment and which causes a damage to the metal. So that process, that reaction is known as corrosion. And example, rusting of iron means reddish brown color formed on the iron due to the interaction with the moisture when we keep it in humid places. Then rancidity is oxidation of fats or oils in food which spoil the food, which damage the food so that we cannot further use that food items. For example, in the chips and snacks items, you can say sometimes it has a foul smell, it has a bad smell, so that you cannot take that food item. So that's as a result of the oxidation of the fats or oils in that food item, and that is known as rancidity. So we have discussed all the reactions and terms used in this chapter. So I hope you got all these points. So finally we can say there are 5 major types of reactions CDDR. So what is this? C for combination, decomposition, displacement, double displacement and redox reaction. These are the 5 important types of chemical reactions that we have discussed now. So I hope you got all these points. We have discussed all the important terms in this chapter. So if you have any doubts, just comment below or reach out to me. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.